Have you ever wondered what it's like to own your own business? Be your own boss? Welcome to Season 7 of Business Mentorship, Keepin It Real, where we meet with corporate leaders who have taken the leap to business owner and join us as part of the Share Your Stories Online series. Hello, I'm Trish Tonak, and today we're going to meet a small business owner, celebrate their great idea, and introduce you to the person behind the logo. We invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Welcome to a special edition of Keeping It Real. Panel discussions with business owners who join us to discuss topics trending in business. Our guests each started a digital magazine that connects with their audience, featuring women in their networks, sharing thought leadership and creating a platform to share the voices of entrepreneurs. Our topic is creating a digital magazine. As editors and publishers, I'm sure our guests will agree, it takes a leap of faith to create marketing assets to amplify voices, build credibility, and increase visibility. I'd like to introduce you to our expert panel. Ginny Robertson is the founder and publisher of On Purpose Women magazine and the On Purpose Women global community. She's a speaker, a facilitator, author, talk show host, and community builder who creates heart-centered spaces where women connect, share their gifts, live, and lead on purpose. Sabrina Victoria is a TEDx speaker, powerhouse entrepreneur, and founder of Her Nation Global, a bold media platform designed to elevate women in business through high visibility features like podcasts, digital magazine covers, and transformational events. With 20 plus years in door-to-door sales and the co-creation of multiple 6- and 7-figure ventures, Sabrina leads with charisma, strategy, and an unapologetic belief in the power of community and connection. And of course, our annual digital global magazine through Share Your Stories Online, where we shine the spotlight on entrepreneurs who share their great ideas. Our mission is to inspire mentorship and collaboration, showcasing expertise to spark fresh ideas and build meaningful connections. And both of these lovely ladies have been participating in our wonderful community. So thank you so much for that. Welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you, Trish.
It's an absolute pleasure to get together and sort of share thought leadership. And I'm going to start with Ginny because you actually began your print magazine in 2003. And then you added the digital version in 2019. So give us a little bit of background into how that evolved.
I'd always wanted to do a magazine since I was a teenager. And I remember in the mid 80s, I started doing some research and finding out what would it take to actually do a magazine. And everything I read said, you better start with at least $250,000.
Wow.
And I realized later that, they were talking about cosmopolitan type, they were talking about big national magazines. And I had no model for a small, like free, I started out as a small, free, print magazine that was paid for by advertising, distributed around the state. And I didn't have that as a model yet. And so years passed, and I started my community in 2000. And in 2003, my son married this lovely young woman, and she had just graduated with a degree in graphic design. And I was still carrying that magazine idea. And here's what I said to her. Her name was Alicia. And I said, Alicia, if I were to give you articles and advertisements, do you know how to make it look like a magazine? Because I had no clue. And her eyes lit up because I love that. And she'd worked on a literary magazine in college. And so within 2 months, we had our first issue out.
Good for you.
It's sweet. It was not the least bit professional because I drew on my community. I mean, they were giving me ads and articles, and I didn't have a prototype to show them.
Right.
And when I look at it now, it's like they didn't know how to do ads. We didn't either. So it was like there were all these different sizes and shapes, but I still have, copies of it. It's still such a sweet spot. And that went on for, I guess it was around 2014 when I decided to take a break. No, it was a little bit later than that, 2016. She and my son, unfortunately, they split, but well, I shouldn't say unfortunately because I have a lovely daughter-in-law and grandchild now from a new marriage, but and I'm still friendly with the other lady, and but she needed to just move on, and so I
Right.
took a break. And it was challenging, to do print and the costs and all of that. And so a couple of years later, somebody said to me, "You need to bring that magazine back." And I said, "Well, don't you know how to do that sort of thing?" And she goes, "I do." And I said, "So let's collaborate." It was Catherine Yarborough. Some of you may have run across Catherine. And then a couple of years ago, my VA took it over, and she just does an amazing job. So, it's a very different game to do it digitally. I think
Yeah,
our
for
last
sure.
run of the print magazine was 30,000 copies.
Wow,
So,
that's fantastic.
yeah, yeah.
Now, Sabrina, you launched a digital magazine off the get-go, and you've just relaunched your magazine. So give our viewing and listening audience a little bit of background into that transition.
Yeah, very similar. I had no idea what I was doing. Pretty much everything that I have launched. So I'm new to the online world just in general. I launched post-COVID. So my background, as Trish stated, is door-to-door sales. COVID came, punched me right in the face. My whole business collapsed. You couldn't do door-to-door anymore. And that's when I pivoted into online sales. So it's just since 2021. So Her Nation magazine launched in 2022. I had no clue what I was doing. And I pulled from my community. So I run a community called Her Nation Global. They're all women business owners. And I'm really concentrating on getting seen, heard, so that you can get paid, right?
Right.
Helping women get seen and heard. So media. I had already had a podcast, a magazine seemed like a great alternative or addition as
Mhm.
far as media goes. And yeah, I kind of launched it as kind of like a blog when it first started, and kind of grew it from there. And we just relaunched, rebranded, basically rebranded, and
Mhm.
now it looks. Oh my God, it looks so beautiful now. I'm so happy and so proud, like so proud. The women now, they're writing articles, and not that they weren't proud before, but just the layout is just so much prettier. So, I feel better knowing that when they're sharing their content and their articles, there's just that extra tinge of just, pride in look at this gorgeous publication that I'm being, shown in.
You know what's really interesting is we're all female leaders in our communities, and yet neither any one of us had actually been an editor or publisher before. So, if you had to share with our viewing and listening audience a challenge that you faced in taking on the new role of editor and publisher, what would it be, Jenny?
It was the same challenge I had when I started the community because I came out of corporate America. I was an executive in the finance industry, and I left that at 40 and started something new. I then became a facilitator for a transformational seminar company. And then they left the area, so I just decided I need to do something of my own. And I started facilitating workshops and doing some of those things. And the biggest thing that got in my way, both with doing the community and the magazine, is trying to be all things to all people and trying to please everyone. I remember when the magazine, the first issue came out, and we were having one of our meetings that night. It was a big holiday affair. And I was so proud. We took bundles and bundles, and all the people were looking for their articles. And a woman who was an advertiser, who I knew, and she wasn't always easy. She said to me, "I'm very disappointed in how this looks." And she said it to my designer, which just, it infuriated me actually. It's like, because we were proud of it, even though, like I said, it didn't look that professional. And all the joy went out of me that night because of that one comment. And through the course of the first few years of doing things, I let other people's opinions sway me. And I realize in retrospect that it's because I wasn't clear who I was yet and why I was doing this. What was the big, deep why there?
Mhm.
It wasn't about pleasing anybody. It was much like what Sabrina said. It was about amplifying women's voices, letting them be seen and heard, putting a spotlight on women in general. And there was, that's what drove me. And so I started, I got a thicker skin. And so my my challenge, I guess, was just that. And it still kept, it still kicks in every once in a while. That one little like, ooh, oh, I made a mistake. Oh God.
I
Yeah,
sometimes
I
find,
can release it quicker now than I used to, though.
I always find that, the self-doubt is something that comes in when there's a little bump in the road, like perhaps we haven't met a specific target, that it's because we make a commitment to the people that we're sharing in the publications, I think, that you have this feeling of
Right.
guilt, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, like Sabrina said, I want to showcase the women and have them
Sure.
look as good as they can. And for the most part, everyone's very forgiving about everything. And we don't mess up very often. In fact, I can't remember the last time we did anything that really mattered, that bothered anybody.
Right.
Knock on wood, as they say,
Yeah. Yeah,
But
no,
yeah,
for sure.
yeah, I think that's my answer right there. Yeah. Thank
And
you.
Sabrina, what about you? I mean, we all have challenges, right, in our day-to-day business,
Yeah.
but taking on the role of editor and publisher is like a whole new dynamic, right?
Yeah. I love the response that Jenny gave here. I just had that with the rebrand, not to get too, because I'm not trying to call anyone out, but when right before the rebrand, we have over 600 articles already written, and we just launched ads. As you know, Trish, you have a few ads in there. And I just wanted to make sure, I'm like trying to go through everything, right? Me and my team, I only have a team of 8. So like to go through all this was too much. We're like, there's no way this is going to take us forever to relaunch. So I was like, let's just open it up low key. We won't announce that the rebrand is done, but we'll just like do a quiet opening and we'll let everyone have access to it, all the writers. And I'll just write an email and just say, hey, look at your own stuff. Click on your ads, look at your articles, and make sure everything is lined up and good. Because we changed the font, we changed the colors, we changed everything. So a lot of the stuff was like skewed, right? So we were like, go into your stuff. Everyone's, 5, 6 articles each, maybe 10 at the most. No big deal, right? They can go in, they can check their own stuff. The amount of people that, because we weren't done yet. So there were still huge spots where like ads weren't filled yet. There was like big blank spots. There was like the between the articles on the front of the magazine were all like askewed and weird. And there was actually quite a few people that announced it to me like, hey, this looks bad. This looks horrible. This looks whatever. And there was one woman that told me that there was no way I was going to be able to launch on time. She's like, I'm afraid to tell you, but there's no way you're going to launch on time. And I did not even respond to that woman. I was like, listen here, I'm gonna launch on time. And I freaking did.
Yeah.
The biggest issue that I have always with everything that I'm launching is the tech. I
Yeah.
get like tech overload. Oh, I cannot even. I'll just sit at my screen sometimes and just be like, this is the biggest like brain damage
That's
I have
true.
ever had in my life.
That's so true.
Like I can't even function. I'm just like, it hurts my brain so bad. I would say that's it. I'm incredible at networking, incredible at communication, incredible at sales, and it's always the tech that
Yeah.
keeps me moving as quickly as I want to be moving. And I'm also at the point in my business, we're still very new,
Hmm.
where I want to know everything, right? So before I give it to my team, I want to know how long it takes, the steps of which to do, because I could just give it to them, obviously. But when it comes to like pay, what they're expecting, how hard the thing is, I like to know.
Sure.
So that there's an understanding on my end of how hard something is or how easy something is, so I can pay accordingly.
Right.
So that's probably my biggest thing.
That brings me to a really interesting thought because, when you think of all the things that we have to learn, we're experts in specific areas, right? And the tech absolutely can be a huge barrier. Now we're running digital magazines. So, there's various different formats that you can choose. There's, the flip book. You can do it as a full running page. There's various different options. So, Ginny, how did you decide on the actual platform you were going to use to host your magazine?
Well, I want to go back to launching the print magazine. I'll say a
Mhm.
few words about that. we had a meeting with a local printer. It was actually a weekly newspaper that did a lot of printing. And I'm sitting there in this meeting with my designer and the head of the print facility and the salesperson. And my designer and the print facility manager are talking and they're using these words. And the sales guy and I are just kind of sitting there telling jokes. I mean, we're just like rolling our eyes and going, what the heck are they talking about? And I just knew when we left there that she was going to say to me, we can't do this. It's just too hard. And I said, we can't do this, can we? She goes, what are you talking about? And I said, she goes, oh yeah, I know how, yeah. And so she handled all of it. I do not have the need to know anything like that. I don't. Because it's not in my lane. It fries my brain. And then when I went digital, my VA loves research. If she doesn't know how to do it, she will figure it out. And I don't have issues around pay and everything because she's getting paid, a certain amount for the magazine. And so she just does what it takes to pull it off. So the less I know, the better.
I love that you stay in your lane, Ginny, because
Yeah.
I think I'm a little bit more like I cover the bases between you and Sabrina because when it starts to get a little overwhelming, that's when I sit back and I try to convince myself, okay, Trish, stay in your lane. But if
Yeah,
it's
let's let go of it.
right, yeah. But if it's coming together, then I'm like Sabrina, and I'm like, ooh, let's look into this a little further and
Yeah.
figure this
Yeah.
out, right? So I kind of straddle both sides of the fence. But Sabrina, how did you decide on the platform for your digital magazine? Because there are so many amazing options available. How did you decide on the actual format?
Yeah, I was at Barnes and Nobles. I was at Barnes and Nobles. I love books. I love to read. I'm always looking for things for my ladies, right? What can I do for my ladies? What else can I do for my ladies? I ended up always in the business section of Barnes and Nobles as far as books and or magazines. And wound up in the magazine business. And I'm just kind of filtering through, Forbes, Wall Street, entrepreneur.com, la la la. And I got caught up in entrepreneur.com or entrepreneur magazine, sorry. And just kind of flipping through and saw some beauty. It was like a layout of women. It was like five women that had done something big, and it was just like layout, just women, women, women. I'm like, dude, this is so, if I could like have beautiful pictures of my ladies like this and they all have this little article of them, oh, I would love to do this for my ladies. And I did the same thing Jenny did, where I was like, how much does this cost? I got on my phone right away. How much does it cost to do a freaking digital, a magazine for my ladies? This would be so great. And ran across the same thing, which is an exorbitant amount of money. And no way. So then I was like, dude, Entrepreneur Magazine has entrepreneur.com. They have all.com.
Right.
So that day, I literally spent $76 on magazines. I grabbed like 10 of them. They're very expensive, by the way. I had no idea. I just grabbed 10 of them. I'm like, oh, I don't know what it'll be. It'll be like 20 bucks. I don't know. I hadn't
Mm-hmm.
bought a magazine in so long. Went to the cashier. It was like literally almost $100 for this little stack of magazines. Went home, went through all these magazines, all the ideas, all the things. Like, what do I want to do? Went onto entrepreneur.com, started Googling like top 10 magazines that are online, top 10 online magazines. Found them, the layout, everything. And literally within 30 days launched. So
Good for
I
you.
I launched it as a digital magazine that's set up very much like a Vogue or a entrepreneur.com where there's articles, whole
Mhm.
just skew of articles, and you
Mhm.
click on the article and then the actual article pops up.
Right. Perfect.
Yeah.
Now, the other interesting thing is advertising really does set the stage because we think of magazines and we think of advertising for sure.
Yeah.
So, Ginny, you do have advertisers in your magazine, and I know Sabrina,
Yes.
you have advertisers in your magazine, but sometimes we do things that's not pay to play. We provide opportunities for people to increase their visibility without them having to pay us a fee. Sabrina, how do you feel about that in terms of the content that you do for your magazine? Because I know when we start with free digital publications, we always struggle with the monetization.
Yeah. That was part of my rebrand was the ads. So pre a month ago, whenever the rebrand happened within the last 5 weeks, 4 or 5 weeks, um, I was paying for it strictly out of pocket. The whole
Right.
thing was set up to give my women more exposure.
Right.
And it was almost like a gift. Here's a gift for you. They didn't have to even be in my membership when I first launched it. I acquired probably the first 50 writers were just women who I just loved. I had seen their work, I saw their posts, I was reaching out, women who were writing, very prolific. And I was reaching out to them and saying, hey, if you ever want to write for a magazine, we just launched, I'd love to have you. And my first probably 50 to 100 articles were literally just pulling women who I believed would be able to write beautiful articles for the magazine. We cover health, wealth, and leadership in the world of business for women. And yeah, for about a year, it was just women writing articles, and I was making nothing. I was paying a whole team to publish and do the graphics and everything for it and the bios, and was making no money off of it. And then literally just now, went into we now have ads, sponsorships, and partnerships that we run.
Right. Now, Ginny, you started your magazine, which was basically ad revenue that paid for the magazine and also gave
Right.
exposure. Have you found
Right.
that with, we've all experienced the economic times, it's tough out there. All three of us know how tough it is for people in business right now. Have you found that you've had to tweak your model at all and do something that perhaps Sabrina's doing, where she's doing some is pay to play, some is advertising, and some is complimentary?
Everything is advertising as far as income. Pay to play. You don't have to pay anything to be featured in the magazine. I find it more difficult, however, even though the expenses are a lot less on digital, because
Right.
before it was printing and distribution.
Mm-hmm.
It's noisier now.
Sure.
It's a lot noisier out there. And
Sure.
so, I would have strangers come up to me in coffee shops in person and say, I love your magazine. I recognized your picture. And it was a local yet spread out around the state.
Sure.
And so, but with the digital, it was like I wasn't a known commodity really. I had the community, I had an online community, I had, in-person meetings around the state of Maryland. Before COVID, I wasn't doing anything on Zoom even.
Right.
Oh, just a little bit on Zoom, but I was mostly an in-person kind of organization. And
Mm-hmm.
so I felt like I was a bit of an unknown online.
Mm-hmm.
And the noise that's out there to try to get people's attention, it is more challenging. I needed more ad revenue with the print magazine, obviously, so it hasn't been a real tough thing to have less, have fewer ads. I'm also picky. I turn ads away. There are ads that I will not, just I will not have in the
Sure.
magazine. I'm also
Sure.
very clear that it is a women's magazine by women for women. I have no men writing or even advertising. And I've turned away ads because there's always a woman who can do it.
Sure.
There's always a woman
Yeah.
who can do something.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
did I answer your question?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
absolutely. Now, let's talk a little bit about content is king, because we all know that, without any content, we don't have the magazines to share. But as the editor, do you read each article? Do you designate time to review? I mean, Ginny, you've mentioned that, you've turned some ads away. The features, obviously, you're taking a look at. Now, Sabrina, you mentioned that you've got, hundreds of articles. As the editor, how do you manage the content?
We have over 600.
Yeah.
No, I do not
Is
read.
that in one issue?
No, no, there's no issue.
Okay.
There's no
I was,
issues. Yeah, it's
Just
just
changes the
ongoing.
content,
oh,
right?
oh, it's just
Yeah,
an
it's
ongoing
ongoing.
kind of thing.
Yeah,
Right.
Gotcha.
it's
Right.
ongoing. So no, I do not read anything anymore. For the first 4 months, yes, I read every single thing. And as I was reading, I started to create more rules. So now that I understand the content that a lot of women are writing, there are strict rules of just things that I will not accept. My team knows
Uh-huh.
that those things that we do not accept.
Right.
And there's huge warnings on the forms that say, if your content involves or is about or has these things in it, your content. So that pretty much alleviates anyone writing on those things because they see the warnings. If something
Sure.
does filter in, then my team knows. But yeah, they read, they don't, I'm sure they don't read it. They skim it to make sure.
Sure.
We also skim for AI content, like anything that is very, we have things that we pull them through. each article to make sure that it's not like completely written by AI. So we go like by a percentage, where we can tell according to the system that we use, to make sure that the content is written by a person. Yeah, little things like that.
You know what I love, Sabrina, is that you almost have like a brand guideline for your magazine relative to content,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Which is brilliant because especially when yours is sort of a floating, you don't have issues. So it's not like the January issue or the February issue, or the March. It's not a monthly issue. It's not a quarterly. Yours is free flowing and the content is changing daily, weekly, as you get new content in. I'm sure then you substitute and add more articles, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And depending on the section, so there's I think about 5 sections per page. So there's times when your article could be front and center for a while until
Right.
somebody writes on that same subject. So
Sure.
until somebody writes on that same subject where it is covered up and yours
Mm.
goes to like into the Ethernet,
Yes.
somebody has to keyword it. Sometimes people's articles are up for a while, which they
Right.
appreciate, because they can
Yeah.
go back and screenshot it as much as they want.
Yeah, for sure.
But we do have cover models. So every single month we have 2 cover models that's featured on the front of the magazine or the front of the website. And it's an actual magazine cover. So it's a digital cover. It says Her Nation Magazine. They're beautiful on the front cover. There's articles written that were just written recently, and then their main title and their name. So it looks beautiful. And that's also an upsell. So that's something that that we monetize for them to be able to get the digital cover.
Well, what I love about our conversation is that there's 3 different ways in which we are sharing content. Sabrina's is free flowing and changing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. Ginny's is based on issue, and the Share Your Stories online magazine is annual. So we have 3 different, completely different approaches, but all with the same mission and vision, and that is increasing the visibility of the entrepreneurs that we feature so that they can be seen, heard, found, and hired, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Yes.
So as we wrap up our discussion, I'd like to ask you to share, we do in our guest blog series, we always ask for 3 words of advice. And based on the fact that we've talked about the digital world, a digital marketing asset, and really amplifying the voices of the people in our communities, if someone was to ask you to share a word of advice for women in business today, taking into consideration all of the places that we are and the things that we need to do, is there a particular word that comes to mind that you would like to share with our viewing and listening audience? Ginny, what would your word be?
Authenticity.
Yeah, that's a good one, right? Because
Be real. It's like what I said before about I didn't know who I was, so I wasn't being me out there.
right,
And I
right.
struggled a lot. I struggled a lot because of that. So do you first before you go looking for people, because I found that the false me was showing up and attracting the wrong people because they wanted the false me, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely,
So
for
just
sure.
get clear and really clear. I think the word, that phrase your why is kind of overused, is kind of cliche, but get clear on what lights you up. What is the real fire underneath it all? And don't sway from that. Stay solid in that. And I think things will always turn out pretty well if you can
Oh,
do
that's great
that.
advice. Yeah, that's great advice.
Thanks.
Sabrina?
I would say possible. And I think
Mm,
we're all that, right? None of
Right.
us have any had or any background on what we were doing. And we had a choice. We had a choice between the word possible or impossible. And we both chose possible. And we
Mhm.
figured it out. And I think so often, especially in the world of women in business, they have these grandiose ideas, these visions that they have that they want to create. And a lot of them are sitting in a bucket of impossible, right? We're Googling things and Google or ChatGPT is telling us that it's impossible. We can't do it. And if we start sitting in the space of how could I, what
Right.
would it look like? That's
Yeah.
when we can really start opening up the possibilities.
And I think that one of the things that I think is really awesome is that we're all tenacious. So we have a great idea. We may not have had the nuts and bolts of how we were going to make it happen, but each of us in our own way used our authentic selves and used the foundational element that it's possible and made it happen. And I think that's a really wonderful and brilliant thing to leave with our viewing, listening audience, because, as editors and publishers of these great digital assets, I think that we're not only achieving our objectives to help our communities, but we're also providing something really amazing for the readers that we connect with. So thank you very much for each of you for joining me today and giving us a glimpse into some of the issues behind the scenes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
We appreciate your contributions as business owners, and I wish you continued success as you continue to lead by example as both role models and mentors in your communities. And to our viewing and listening audience, if you'd like to connect with one of our panel guests, you'll find their story and contact information in the description portion below. I'm Trish Tonai, author, artist, and the founder and host for the series. And if you're interested in sharing your business story, visit our website at shareyourstories.online. And in the meantime, subscribe to our show, Business Mentorship, Keepin It Real. Ginny, Sabrina, and myself, thank you for joining us. And we look forward to meeting you next time with another episode of Keeping It Real.